Today in Top 10 Gaming, one of our favorite systems of all time, it's the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Here are our picks for Top 10 games of all time for the NES. Number 10, Batman. The first Batman video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System was released in 1989, coinciding with the release of the blockbuster film of the same name. The game was developed by Sunsoft and was based on the movie, although it featured a unique storyline. The game was a side-scrolling platformer that featured Batman battling his way through various levels, fighting a variety of enemies and bosses. The gameplay was fast-paced and challenging, and the graphics and sound were very impressive for the time. One of the unique features of the game was the ability for Batman to use a range of gadgets, such as batarangs and grappling hooks, to help him navigate the levels and defeat enemies. The game also featured a password system, allowing players to save their progress and continue playing later. The Batman NES game was well received by both critics and fans, and it helped to establish Batman as a popular character in the world of video games. The success of the game led to a sequel, Batman: Return of the Joker, which was released in 1991. Overall, the NES Batman remains a classic of the era, and it continues to be enjoyed by fans of retro gaming and Batman alike. Number 9, Contra. Contra is a side-scrolling run-and-gun video game developed and published by Konami for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987. It is part of the Contra series, which is known for its challenging gameplay and fast-paced action. The game is set in the year 2633, where the player controls two commandos, Bill Reiser and Lance Bean, who are sent on a mission to defeat an alien invasion. The game features 8 levels, each with a unique boss, and the player must navigate through various obstacles and enemies while collecting power-ups to enhance their weapons and abilities. Contra was well received upon its release and became a commercial success, selling over 4 million copies worldwide. Its popularity led to the creation of several sequels and spin-offs, including Super Contra and Contra 3: The Alien Wars. The game is also known for its iconic cheat code, the Konami code, which is actually used in several Konami titles. This allows the player to gain 30 lives by entering the code up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start, or select start to begin the game, whether you're 1 or 2 players. This code became a cultural phenomenon and is still referenced in popular media to this day. Overall, Contra remains a beloved classic in the history of video games, and its impact can still be felt in the industry today. Number 8, Metroid. Metroid is a classic action-adventure game developed by Nintendo for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was first released in Japan in August 1986 and later in North America in August 1987. Metroid is set in a science fiction universe that follows the story of Samus Aran, a bounty hunter tasked with defeating the space pirates and their leader, Mother Brain. The game takes place on the planet Zebes, where Samus must explore various areas, collect power-ups, and battle enemies in order to progress through the game. One of the unique aspects of Metroid was its non-linear gameplay, which allowed players to explore the game world in any order they choose. This was achieved through the use of a password system, which allowed players to save their progress and return to the game at a later time. The game was well received upon its release and has since become a classic in the gaming industry. Its popularity led to the development of several sequels, including Metroid 2: Return of Samus for the Game Boy in 1991, Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1994, and Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance in 2002. Metroid has been re-released on several different platforms, including the Nintendo GameCube as part of the Metroid Prime series and the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console. The game's popularity has spawned numerous fan adaptations and inspired many other games in the action-adventure genre, also known as Metroidvania. Number 7. Dragon Warrior II, also known as Dragon Quest II in Japan, is a role-playing video game developed by Chunsoft and published by Enix, now Square Enix, for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was released in Japan in 1987 and in North America in 1990. Dragon Warrior II takes place a century after the events of the first game in the land of Torland. The players control a party of 3 characters: a prince from the kingdom of Mindenhall, a princess from the kingdom of Canuck, and a prince from the kingdom of Moonbrook, who must defeat the evil wizard Hargon and his minions to save the world. The gameplay of Dragon Warrior II is similar to the first game, with turn-based battles and exploration of a large world map, much expanded from the original version. The game introduced also several new features, such as the ability to sail a ship and explore underwater areas, and the use of a wagon to carry additional party members, as well as a day-night cycle that affects certain events in the game. Dragon Warrior II is well received by critics and fans, with many praising its improved graphics and gameplay over the first game. However, some criticize the game's difficulty, particularly in the final boss battle, which requires players to defeat 2 powerful bosses in a row without any chance to heal in between battles. Dragon Warrior II was later ported to several other platforms, including the Super Famicom, the Game Boy Color, and mobile phones. It also received a direct sequel, Dragon Warrior III, which could have easily made this list as well, which was released in Japan in 1988 and North America in 1991. The Dragon Quest series remains popular in Japan and around the world, with numerous sequels and spin-offs released over the years. Number 6. DuckTales. DuckTales is a classic video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System that was released in 1989. The game was developed and published by Capcom and is based on the popular animated television series of the same name. The game follows and adventures of Scrooge McDuck, a wealthy and adventurous duck, as he travels around the world in search of treasure. The gameplay involves navigating through various levels and using Scrooge's cane as a weapon and a tool to solve puzzles. The game was well received by critics and players alike, with praise for its graphics, music, and gameplay. It became one of the most popular NES games of all time and was later ported to other platforms such as the Game Boy and PC. In 2013, the game was remastered and released for modern consoles such as PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Wii U. The remastered versions featured updated graphics and sound, as well as additional content. DuckTales for the NES has since become a beloved classic amongst video game enthusiasts and is often cited as one of the best platformers of its era. Its success also led to the development of a sequel, DuckTales 2, which was released for the NES in 1993 and which is also a very popular title. Number 5. Tetris. Tetris is a popular puzzle game that was created by Russian game designer Alexei Pachinov in 1984. The game was initially developed for the Electronica 60 computer, but later became popular for other platforms, including the Nintendo Entertainment System. The NES version of Tetris was developed by Bulletproof Software and released for the Nintendo in 1989 by Nintendo. The NES version of Tetris featured the classic gameplay that made the game so popular. In Tetris, players are tasked with arranging falling blocks in various shapes in a way that created complete horizontal lines without any gaps. As the game progressed, the blocks fell faster and faster, making it more difficult to complete lines. One of the most unique aspects of the NES version of Tetris was the game's music. The game featured a catchy Russian folk tune that played in the background during gameplay. The music became synonymous with Tetris and is still recognized by many today. The NES version of Tetris was a huge success and helped to popularize the puzzle game genre on home consoles. It was widely regarded as one of the best games of the NES and has since been ported to many other platforms, including mobile devices and modern gaming consoles. However, the development of the NES version of Tetris was not without controversy. There were legal disputes over the ownership and distribution rights to the game that lasted for years. In the end, it was determined that the rights to the game belonged to Pachnatov and the Soviet government and not the company that had licensed it to Nintendo. This led to a series of lawsuits and negotiations that eventually resulted in a settlement between the various parties involved. Despite these issues, the NES version of Tetris remains classic and beloved game for many gamers around the world. Number 4, Punch-Out! Known in Japan as Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, in a classic boxing video game released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987. The game was developed and published by Nintendo and designed by the famous Genyo Takada and Makoto Wada. In the game, players control a young boxer named Little Mac, who is attempting to make his way up the ranks of the World Video Boxing Association, the WVBA. Little Mac must fight his way through a series of increasingly tough opponents, each with their unique fighting style and weaknesses. The game's graphic and sounds were well received upon its release, and gameplay mechanics were praised for their simple yet addictive nature. The game's popularity led to creation of several sequels and spin-offs, including a Super NES version in 1994, a Game Boy Advance version in 2001, and even a Wii version in 2009. One of the most notable aspects of the original NES version of Punch-Out was its use of characters from the real-life boxing world. The final boss of the game was originally Mike Tyson, the then undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. However, due to licensing issues, subsequent re-releases of the game have replaced Tyson with the new character named Mr. Dream. Despite the changes, Punch-Out remains a beloved classic of the NES era and is remembered for its challenging gameplay, colorful characters, and memorable soundtrack. Number 3, Mega Man 2. Mega Man 2 is a classic action platformer video game developed and published by Capcom for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was released in Japan on December 24th, 1988, and in North America in 1989. Mega Man 2 is the second installment of the Mega Man series, and it follows the story of Mega Man, the main character, who is a robot created by Dr. Light to battle evil robots created by his nemesis, Dr. Wily. The game is set in a futuristic world where robots are a common sight, and Mega Man must traverse various levels and defeat 8 robot masters in order to face off against Dr. Wily himself. The game was directed by Akira Kitamura and produced by Takuro Fujiwara. The development team faced numerous challenges during the game's creation, including a tight development schedule and a limited budget. Nevertheless, they managed to create a game that improved on the original Mega Man in nearly every way. Mega Man 2 introduced a number of gameplay mechanics that would become staples in the series, including the ability to charge Mega Man's blaster and use energy tanks to restore health. The game also featured a memorable soundtrack, which has since become a classic in the gaming community. Upon its release, Mega Man 2 was a critical and commercial success, and is widely regarded as one of the best games in the series, and perhaps one of the best games of all time. The game's success helped cement Mega Man's place as one of the most iconic characters in video game history, and it has since been ported to a variety of platforms, including mobile devices and modern consoles. Number 2, Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a platform game developed and published by Nintendo for the NES in 1988. It is the third installment in the Super Mario Bros. Series and is considered one of the most iconic and influential video games of all time. The game was developed by team lead Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. Miyamoto and Tezuka had previously worked on the first two games in the series and wanted to create a game that would surpass them in every way. Super Mario Bros. 3 introduces several new gameplay elements and power-ups, including the ability to fly with a super leaf and throw hammers with a hammer suit. The game also features a world map that allows players to choose their own path through the game's 8 worlds. The game was first released in Japan in October 1988, where it quickly became a massive success. It was later released in North America in February of 1990 and in Europe and Australia later that same year. Super Mario Bros. 3 was a critical and commercial success, selling over 18 million copies worldwide and receiving universal acclaim from critics. It won numerous awards and accolades, including Game of the Year from several publications. The game's influence can still be felt today, with many of its elements and innovations being used in modern platformers. It is often regarded as one of the greatest video games of all time and remains a beloved classic amongst gamers of all ages. Coming up first, we have Castlevania III: Dracula's Curse. Dracula's Curse is an action platformer game developed and published by Konami for the NES in 1989. The game is the third installment in the Castlevania franchise and serves as a prequel to the original game. The story of Castlevania III: Dracula's Curse takes place in 1476, 215 years before the events of the first game. The player controls Trevor Belmont, a descendant of the Belmont clan who is on a quest to defeat Dracula and save the land of Wallachia. Along the way, Trevor can recruit up to 3 other playable characters: Sypha, a powerful mage, Grant, a nimble thief, and Alucard, Dracula's son who opposes his father's evil plans. The game features gameplay mechanics similar to the first 2 Castlevania games, including side-scrolling action and the use of sub-weapons. However, Castlevania III introduced several new features, including the ability to switch between characters and paths, multiple endings, and a branching storyline that depended on the player's choices. Castlevania III was incredibly well received by critics and fans alike for its challenging yet fair gameplay, improved graphics, unbelievable sound, and its introduction of new gameplay elements. It is often considered one of the best games for the classic NES, and hey, we agree. And also tied at number 1 is The Legend of Zelda. The Legend of Zelda is a classic action-adventure video game that was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1986. It was developed and published by Nintendo and quickly became one of the most popular games of its time. The game follows the journey of a young hero named Link, who must rescue Princess Zelda and save the land of Hyrule from the evil sorcerer Ganon. To do this, Link must travel through various dungeons, collect weapons and items, and battle enemies along his way. The game is known for its non-linear gameplay, where players are free to explore the game's vast world and complete dungeons in any order they choose. The game also introduced the concept of saving progress through the use of a battery backup system, which was a significant innovation for console games at the time. The Legend of Zelda was critically acclaimed upon its release and went on to become one of the best-selling games for the NES. It has spawned a successful franchise that continues to this day, with numerous sequels and spin-offs across multiple platforms. The game's ultimate success is due in large part to its innovative gameplay mechanics, memorable characters, engaging storyline, and it's certainly become a beloved classic for generations of gamers. So there you have it, those are our top 10 NES games of all time. Thanks for watching.